going back to a certain level of budgeting 6 years ago. I didn't emphasize the priorities in the transition because I think that, you know, Social Security beneficiaries, promises have been made. We took the money. The money's been spent. We all know that. There's no money in the bank, but I still think we should try to provide the promises and take care of the promises. Medicare is the same way. Child health care would be the same thing. So actually, my budget proposal doesn't even take, doesn't diminish it or get rid of it. I would hope to see the day where we could work our way out of it and think of a better way, because this is rather new in history. Like I said, in my lifetime, in the time I practiced medicine, there was a time when people would go to hospitals and they needed help. There were charity hospitals. I worked in a Catholic hospital for a while. And even today, even in the midst of all the government, there is a burn hospital in Galveston, Texas, in my district. And it takes care of any child that is burned for free. And just think how much more prosperity we would have if we had a free market economy. Now the concern is we're broke. We can't pay any of our bills, and how are we going to make, service all these people? And the only way you can do that, to even take care of people that needs the medical care or the elderly, is to cut that kind of spending. If you go along with this idea that you don't have to cut anything, you're kidding yourself, because those programs will exist and Social Security beneficiaries are going to get their checks, but already those checks are buying less. Their standard of living is going down. So we're on a dead-end course. So even if, in order to take care of some of those programs, you have to cut the spending elsewhere. But they're not my top priority. I would just hope that someday that we would be able to work our way and make encouragement that we get back to self-reliance.
Dr. Paul, is there any way that you would consider allowing citizens my age the same access to Medicare benefits as citizens your age?
Medicare benefits?
Mm-hmm. Just like I feel that even though I'm a lot younger than 65, I shouldn't be denied the right to have those benefits that the elderly have.
Well, they're struggling. They can't even take care of the elderly right now, and they've used up all that money. Medicare is in worse shape than Social Security. Financially, it's no way. Now, what they've done, if young people if they don't have a job and can't take care of themselves, they have the Medicaid programs, which is something I don't attack. But no, that wouldn't work. The dollars just aren't there. Matter of fact, the previous generation are depending on you to work to pay for their medical care. So at your age, no, it's not going to work. Hopefully what we need is a very prosperous economy where you have good jobs, and like we were talking about earlier, is get your own benefits and your own deduction rather than the corporations, being involved and getting a tax break that the individual doesn't get.
Hi, Dr. Paul. Welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank you.
My concern is related to foreign policy, and there's been a lot of discussion about your policy regarding our safety abroad, pulling troops back where we don't feel they should be deployed. But specifically, we face some very serious threats in the Middle East, specifically Iran. Could you expound on how you would handle Iran in the minimum and maximum extremes of the cases that we possibly face with them? Because nuclear Iran scares most people. So if you comment on Iran.
Well, it should scare us. All nuclear bombs scare me. And we've had way too many of them. But some of my opinions come from the experience I had when I was in the Air Force during the 60s. I went in when the greatest confrontation with the Soviets occurred in the October of '62. That's when I received my draft notice. Fortunately, that was over with by the time I got sworn in. Then I was in during the Vietnam era. But they had 30,000. They had them in Cuba. We had them all around their country. And we were about to have a nuclear exchange. Now, that's a problem. Compare that to the problem that we see, the potential problem with Iran, maybe someday getting a nuclear weapon. First thing is, the danger is way overblown about them having one in the near future. I think they would like to, and I think that would be a concern, and I don't want them to get one. But the AEA, you know, the UN says they have no evidence that they're on the verge of a nuclear weapon. Our own CIA says that. But to give you some reassurance, you know, the head of the Mossad and the previous head of the Mossad, the secret police for Israel, said that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, it will not pose an existential threat to Israel. So they're saying, hold off. Let's not get overly excited. Let's not start dropping bombs. 3 of our previous CENTCOM commanders, 3 generals, have said they're against doing anything radical in there. So my greatest fear is that we will overreact, go in, and not have a good reason to go in, like we went into Iraq. Think of all the things that were stirred up about Iraq. Nuclear weapons, weapons of mass destruction, Al-Qaeda, and all these things related to 9/11. None of it was true. And then we ended up, you know, occupying Afghanistan. We've lost 8,500 Americans. We have about 45,000 American severe injuries, hundreds of thousands begging for help. So we should only go to war with a great deal of caution. And I'm just saying. So it's not that I dismiss it and that it's not important. I'm just saying there's different ways to do it. I felt very fortunate in that October 1962 because Kennedy had at least had the wisdom to call up Khrushchev and talk it out, and they both agreed to move their missiles out. Khrushchev moved them out of Cuba, Kennedy moved them out of Turkey. So I'm suggesting that more can be achieved without immediately resorting to violence, and the need to get involved violence over there right now. And you have to, and this whole thing of sanctions, that is the first step to war. This is really very dangerous, and we had sanctions on Iraq for 10 years, and finally we went to war against Iraq. But sanctions, literally, think of it, I want you to think about a golden rule for foreign policy. What if China did in the Gulf of Mexico what we're doing in the Persian Gulf? How would we react? What if China's lining up there and move their ships in and use drone missiles to bomb a few of their enemies that might be on our land? We wouldn't like that very well, and we would be unified. But we're over there, and we never see it. We never see it from their viewpoint. We just see it from our viewpoint, and I think it is sometimes a distorted viewpoint. They haven't forgotten 1953. We went into Iran and overthrew their government, and threw out an elected leader. They were practicing democracy, but we didn't like him because he didn't want to give the oil benefits to the British and the Americans. He wanted to keep the benefits for the Iranians. So we overthrew him, Mossadegh, put in the Shah, who was there for 26 years, and he was a ruthless dictator. What does that do? That starts and stimulates radicalism. And that's how radical Islam got going in Iran until you had the mullahs take over in 1979. But most of us don't know that or care about it or see the relationship. But there are reactions to this. There's blowback. Our CIA knows about it. And this is why we should be more cautious. Also, I point about what happened in the 1960s and the 50s. The French and the Americans were fighting the Vietnamese we did it for 20 years. 1 million Vietnamese were killed. And we got over there and get involved. We didn't declare war. We just went in there and got involved in a civil war. Because we were going to stop the movement of communism. So we go over there, we lose 60,000 lives, and then we lose, and then we walk out. And guess what happened? There was no domino effect of communism. The Chinese moved toward Western economics. They have become our banker, and they're not doing too badly. And then the Vietnamese have become westernized. They trade with us. We travel back and forth. And just think of what happened in peace that we couldn't pursue in war. So the use of force should be the very last thing you do. And And also, I think it's worthwhile thinking, although this introduces a religious attitude, but I think there's nothing wrong with considering the just war principles that have been around since St. Augustine. And they're not bad principles. You fight war in defense, and you do it proportionally. You do it after you talk people, and you have to do it to protect your own people. So there's nothing wrong with those principles. They're universal principles, and I just try to follow those because I think the goal is peace. It isn't occupation.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the current healthcare system that was voted in and how that will cost a lot of money, and if you have any plan, direction you could go to make that not as bad as it could be if you were president.
Was she talking about Obamacare?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, anything we do could make it better, I would think. Well, you know, if we can't reverse it and we can't get Congress to immediately repeal the whole thing, the one thing that we always should preserve when government gets overly involved and we're struggling to retain our liberties is always give the people the option of getting out of it. Opting out is very important. So if it's a bad deal to be involved in one of these programs, I think everybody should have a chance to get out of it. It's sort of like the way we have, a lot of people complain about our educational system. We have problems a bit around the world, around the country, and certainly I don't think federal control of education helps. But we also are able to opt out, and a lot of people do, and they have a right to homeschool and go to private school. And I think that's very good. In medicine, we ought to be able to opt out too. But there's a lot of things that we can do. Actually, obviously, I voted against Obamacare, and we should repeal it because there's no way it can be paid for the way we're going. And there will be rationing. There is already rationing, and that's a bad thing. Because once governments get involved, the big problem is, since the 60s, when the government got involved, they pump money, whether it's pumping it into education or into medicine or into housing. It usually doesn't give us better quality. What it does, it push prices up. Push the price of houses way up. It pushes the cost of education way up. And that's what government does on in medical care. It makes the prices, the costs skyrocket. Then they say, well, the government has to come in and give more money out to the poor people who can't afford it. But the problem is really a monetary policy and then a government intervention policy, because if you want the maximum efficiency in delivering goods and services, you have to look to the free market, because that is the way to deliver goods and services. How about up here? I know this gentleman's been out. Would do.
Thank you. I traveled here from Rhode Island, and I just wanted to say thank you for letting us ask you questions. And I've been following the news quite a bit. I watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and I do find that there seems to be a lot of people that keep saying over and over again that you're unelectable. You're unelectable, you're unelectable. And then I start to see that on Twitter and then on Facebook amongst friends and family. Why do you think that the media keeps saying things like that? Is there some sort of agenda behind it, or is there just, I don't understand it. Doesn't make sense. I think you are. So.
I think it's wishful thinking on their part.